What's up, guys? It's MB Boxing, and today I'm going to be predicting the outcome of Filip Hrgovic versus Demsey McKean, and this is going to be a 12-rounder in the heavyweight division, and this fight is going to be Saturday, August 12th from the O2 Arena in London, England, and this fight is going to be broadcasted on DAZN pay-per-view. And to get both fighters' resumes, Filip Hrgovic fighting out of Croatia. He holds a record of 15 wins, no defeats, with 12 wins coming by way of knockout. Hrgovic won a bronze medal at the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Summer Olympic Games. And Hrgovic is also the IBF mandatory challenger and is coming off of that eliminator victory over Zhilei Zhang. And he's also currently ranked number 14 by BoxRec in the heavyweight division. So to get into some of Hrgovic's best wins, he has defeated Zhilei Zhang by unanimous decision, which is really a great win. Obviously, now it's aged better, considering that Zhang beat Joe Joyce. But Filip Hrgovic, to get into some of his other decent wins, he defeated Radel Booker by TKO. He knocked out Eric Molina, and he also knocked out Amir Mansour. But to get into his opponent's resume, Demsey McKean, fighting out of Australia, holds a record of 22 wins with no defeats and 14 wins coming by way of knockout. He is currently ranked number 54 by BoxRec in the heavyweight division. And to list some of his best wins, he has defeated Kiki Toa Leutele by unanimous decision, and he also has a 10th round technical knockout victory over Johnny Rice. So in my opinion, this fight is a pretty decent heavyweight scrap. I mean, both of these guys are very solid. Hrgovic is like a top 10 level heavyweight. Demsey McKean, I would say around like top 30, top 25. But I'm saying that just based off of his resume. But I think if he were to fight some other guys around that top 25, top 20-ish range, I think he could beat some of them. I think McKean's a much better fighter than people have made him out to be. I've seen some other people's predictions on this fight, and they aren't giving McKean enough credit. I think McKean will give Hrgovic a decent fight. I mean, you have to look at Hrgovic's resume. Hrgovic hasn't fought really anyone except for Zhang, and obviously that Zhang win is a big win because he went the full 12, had to battle through some tough times. I mean, he lost his dad right before that fight, I believe so he was going through a lot mentally as well. And Hrgovic has said it himself. He said that was his worst night, and he beat Zhang on his worst night. I mean, I happen to think he lost to Zhang because he got dropped as well for the first time in his career in that one with a nice check hook from Zhang in the first round. But I mean, yeah, I think that Filip Hrgovic will win this fight. I mean, I'm just going to say that clear. I think Filip Hrgovic will get the victory here. But McKean is definitely his second toughest opponent ever, and he's undefeated. You have to remember. Undefeated, big southpaw as well. He's 6'6". He's a southpaw. I mean, even though he has 14 knockouts, I don't think that McKean has a lot of power. I mean, I've seen him fight some other guys. I saw him fight this guy named Ariel Brasamante, who's from Argentina. He's a journeyman. I saw McKean fight him on a DAZN card, and he won pretty easily by decision, but he was just hitting him, and Brasamante was not going anywhere. So, I mean, I think that Hrgovic will be able to take the power of McKean. But when Zhang was fighting Hrgovic, I mean, Zhang was able to hurt Hrgovic numerous times in that fight, and I thought he won more rounds than Hrgovic did. But it was a very, very close fight nonetheless. But, I mean, Hrgovic really was going through some tough times in that one. He was getting hit. He was running, turning his back, looking at the clock, trying to survive. But in the end, the judges gave him the decision. Because in the later rounds, he actually did very, very well, considering Zhang was absolutely gassed in those later rounds. And I think Hrgovic's gas tank won't really be a problem in this one. For some reason, I know he looked pretty tired in the middle rounds in that Zhang fight. Maybe it's just because he was getting hurt with some big shots. But in the later rounds, it looked like he was sort of recharged a bit just to push through, get some of those later rounds, and he got the victory. But in terms of this one between McKean, just to break down how I see this fight going round by round. I know a lot of fights are fought between like quarters and halves. Like one fighter might do well in the early rounds, one fighter might do well in the later rounds. I don't necessarily think either man's going to have that sort of like late round victories or early round victories. I think this fight will be pretty decently fought throughout. I think we'll pretty much see a similar fight throughout the entire time. Maybe some game plan changes throughout, but I think primarily Hrgovic will be getting the better of McKean. But I think McKean could definitely win a decent amount of rounds against Hrgovic. And I think that Hrgovic in this fight will start out going forward. I think that Demsey McKean, I heard him talking in some interview prior to this fight, and he was saying that he's preparing to go 12 rounds for this fight, and if he can get a stoppage, that might be what he has to do. But, I mean, he's preparing to go all 12, I think. So I think in the earlier rounds, his main game plan that he's been talking with his coaches is primarily to counter Hrgovic. And I know that Hrgovic was fighting on the back foot against Zhang. I mean, he had some spurts going forward and throwing combinations on Zhang when he was a bit tired. But I think that in the earlier rounds, Hrgovic is going to be pressing McKean. And I think McKean might be able to edge one of the earlier rounds in this one. Like after the first 4 rounds, it's probably going to be 39-37 for Hrgovic. I think that McKean could edge the first round just by landing like maybe some decent jabs, just doing a bit more in sort of a feel-out round, I guess you could say. But I think that Hrgovic will step on the gas pedal, and I think he'll be a bit more active than McKean in the first half of this one. And I think that even like rounds 4, 5, and 6, I think Hrgovic should be getting the better of McKean. McKean, I mean, when he fought Jonathan Rice, that's probably his toughest fight he's had to date. I mean, that was a very, very tough fight. Some people had Jonathan Rice ahead when he got the stoppage. But, I mean, like McKean, I've seen him fight both ways. I've seen him fight coming forward and pressing a bit, and I've seen him at mid-range and boxing on the outside as well. But like I said before, I think in the earlier rounds, he's going to be on the one trying to fight sort of at mid-range and on the outside trying to counter Hrgovic. But I don't think that's going to be working out too well for him. And I think that after the first 6 rounds, I think Hrgovic could be up like 59-55, like 5 rounds to 1, just winning pretty clearly. It could be 58-56, but I think that Hrgovic will just be getting the better of McKean in the first half. Then in the second half, I think that Hrgovic will start to slow down, start to realize that McKean's not going anywhere and that he's probably not going to get the stoppage if he's just going to be pressing forward. And I think Hrgovic is going to tone it down with his activity and just try and land decent shots and work on his accuracy. And I think that Hrgovic will start to tone it down in the sort of middle to start of the later rounds, like rounds 7, 8, and 9. I think that McKean is going to try and push for his own offense. And I think this is where McKean could have some of his better work in this fight. And I think that he could edge maybe 2 of those rounds, somewhere in between there, maybe one of them. But I think they're going to be a bit closer than the earlier rounds. But like I said before, a lot of people, in my opinion, have discredited McKean a bit. And who knows, I could be 100% wrong. Hrgovic could blow him out, which I've been hearing from a lot of people. But I think that McKean has got a pretty decent chin on him. He's a pretty tough guy. He's a southpaw. So I think he's going to give Hrgovic a decent fight in those sort of middle to later rounds. And I think that Hrgovic is going to tone down in his activity, try not to gas himself out by just walking McKean down. But I think McKean will start to try and work with his own offense. I don't think he's going to have the greatest amounts of success. And I think, like, let's say this brings us to, like, the 8th round. It could be, like, 78-74 for Hrgovic, something like that. But I think rounds 7 and 8 could be somewhat competitive, and I think McKean could edge one of them. But then rounds, like the late rounds of this fight, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Going into those later rounds, I only think that McKean should have maybe 2 rounds. Could be 3 rounds to his credit, but I think that in those later rounds, Hrgovic is really just going to try and pull the fight through. I think he's just going to be landing the better, harder shots. And I know that McKean does have some late stoppages in his career, most notably that stoppage victory over Jonathan Rice. But, I mean, when Hrgovic fought Zhang, he looked pretty well in those later rounds. So I think that Hrgovic will be getting the better of McKean. And I think that, like, rounds 9 and 10, Hrgovic will still be kind of, I think that Hrgovic will be sort of at the, like, mid-range a bit, and not coming forward as much, like in rounds 9 and 10. And then I think rounds 11 and 12, I think he'll step on the gas pedal. I think he'll be the one coming forward. And I think he'll just try and pull this fight through on a very positive note just to ensure a victory in this one. And I didn't get to mention, I know I mentioned that Hrgovic is the IBF mandatory. I'm pretty sure he is. as of now. But the winner of this fight, I think for sure gets that spot. I know he won that eliminator versus Zhang, but I think the winner of this fight for sure is the #1 mandatory in the IBF. And who knows, that could lead to an Usyk fight or something like that in the near future. But yeah, I think rounds 9 and 10 going to be pretty competitive. McKean might edge one of them. And then rounds 11 and 12, I think Hrgovic will take. I think he'll just try and close this fight out pretty solid. I think he'll just be more active than McKean. I think this fight in the end will go the distance, all 12 rounds. And I think that the judges will be in agreement on this one. I think it will be a unanimous decision for Filip Hrgovic. And I think Hrgovic should win this fight pretty clearly. I think that one judge will have it wider for Hrgovic at 118, 110. One will have it 117, 111 for Hrgovic. And the third will have it a bit closer, favoring McKean a little bit at 116, 112. But in the end, I think McKean should win anywhere between 4 rounds, 3 rounds, or even 2 rounds over Hrgovic. But I think this is definitely a very, very solid fight for Filip Hrgovic, a much better victory if he's able to get it than many people are saying. Because he does have that win over Zhang. I think he is a top 10 fighter, and this should be a very, very solid win for him, as I think he will defeat Demsey McKean by unanimous decision. So overall, I think that Filip Hrgovic, in the end, will get his 16th victory and to ensure his IBF mandatory status, as I think he will defeat Demsey McKean by unanimous decision, anywhere between 116, 111, 117, 116, 112, 117, 111, and 118, 110. And yeah, that's really it. I'm MB Boxing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.